我々は技術会社である限りは技術をもって人間に奉仕する。技術というのは人間のためにあるんだ。
Yeah, thank you, Mara-san. It's a nice fit. Beginning of, let's say, beginning of this year, our government decided, pressured by the Social Democrats, to set up an additional, process in order to find out how we can protect our car industry, our automotive industry, which is challenged not only by alternative drives and fuels and digitization, but also by the pandemic. And by accident, yesterday evening, there was a event I participated where our chancellor, 6 ministers, and the representatives of our car industry met for the fourth time. There was a big debate some time ago if we can continue to drive the so-called Green Deal as promised by the European Union, despite the challenges by the pandemic, and most of our citizens and business leaders feel that's the case. On the other side, there is a challenge, might be we've heard it, that the European Commission tries to even ask for higher CO2 emission targets for the automotive industry, which is extremely challenging now, where companies don't earn that much money to reinvest into new technologies. That is the debate we have, and the government has, beside other measures, allocated 2 billion euro for initiatives like Industrie 4.0 in order to secure the competitiveness of the sector. Let me finish in saying that I read an article in a German newspaper 2 days ago where they said that Honda has or will receive a prize called German Car of the Year 2021 for the e-Honda car. So congratulations if that is true. Let me just add one thing, also which is important in Germany, the unions, so the representatives of the employees are sitting at the table. So the German government always invites the CEO and the top representative of the employees. I think that's very important because that means that they try to get, let's say, harmony between the requests from the enterprises and the employees. Yeah, okay. Sorry. No, that's a little bit too nice to me. I think I was chairing a group of 2 or 3 experts coming up with a proposal, and I was also later on the chairman of all the project groups, let's say, to come up with recommendations for Industry 4.0. 4.0, smart services, etc. So you have to consider you need a lot of experts in order to flesh these out. So when we had the first idea, I reached out to Bosch, to Mr. Dice, and asked him if we could both join this project team, and then we assembled 40 people from science, from business, etc. So this is usually, let's say, a work of a group of people, and I was lucky enough to initiate and to some extent be the leader of these groups all the time and present it to our chancellor. Yeah. And you have to consider, I'm, let's say, coming from the IT application area, and if you come up with those ideas, you have also to convince all your colleagues in science from academia who are working in production, engineering, etc. So it's quite interesting if you, as a software developer or of a leader of a software company, go to all these experts from production and promote those things. So from that point of view, you can understand that you have to collect and assemble a lot of experts from different fields in order to get these things going. It's a good question, and let me start not with Industry 4.0, but with the car industry. I mentioned that I was also appointed 2010 at the same time as the chairman of our national platform Electric Vehicles. And in this group, 160 people, we had a separate working group of standards because it was so obvious that you needed standards, because if you drive with an electric car, you know, if you come to a charging station, you know this as good as I know, that it doesn't matter if you are in Germany, France, Italy, wherever you are. At least in Europe, it should have been standardized. And there was a lot of push to get these forward. And we had to create for the first time a cooperation between industries that never ever worked before on standards. That is the car industry and the utilities. And from that point of view, there was already a certain, I would say, experience at least for a year or so, and that worked very, very well. I think we did a good job there. And I believe that has helped us, that the acceptance for Industry 4.0 1 or 2 years later was pretty high. It works in a way that these working groups, this is mostly people from business, they start coming with recommendations, what has to be standardized, then it goes to the German bodies, the German bodies go to the European bodies, and then they go to the international bodies. It's this cascading. And in parallel, what helps is that all these recommendations we usually are able to give to a high governmental official so that people feel it's there is response from the government, and if necessary, other governments helps behind the scenes if it gets very important, let's say on a high level, to talk to other countries. So, and my final point is if you look to Industry 4.0, one of the key topics is plug and produce. That means that you need so-called semantic interoperability between machines of different vendors. And that is only possible if you have global standards. Another point was that they referred to Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, but also driverless transport systems. I think intralogistics driverless helps them to shift in steps, not immediately, but in steps from these, I think, traditional rigid factory production lines to more flexible production cells, which is known, that's there. And interesting for me, they reported to a project which was one of the first in Industry 4.0, and that is the, let's say, a very flexible capacity management of workers. So to combine the flexibility needs of the company if additional demand comes in for, let's say, additional hours or additional shift, with the, I would say, flexibility needs of modern citizens who have to take care sometimes for their parents in times of care, or they get children, so that there is a try to, let's say, use this flexibility to the benefit of both sides. That was one of the very early projects in Industry 4.0, but it never took off. And surprisingly, I read recently that they try partially to introduce this as well, which is very promising. And let me finish in saying that most examples I know are more brownfield approaches where companies, larger companies, try to upgrade existing factories by equipping them with sensor technology, some IoT, etc., in order to leverage the benefits of the digital transformation. There are a few cases I know where companies have taken a greenfield approach, so creating smaller, I would say, showcase factories completely designed to Industry 4.0, and there I have to say the productivity improvements and the time to market has significantly improved, significantly.
どういう
30, 40, 50%, so significant. And obviously they are concerned to make it too public, because in one case it's a very small factory, but they reduced, let's say, what they did normally with 12 people, they could do with 3. And you can imagine that that is not something which they want to make too much, too popular, because then other concerns pop up there. Final example, I think we can take the time. There is what I like very much is that was a joint, very small effort between the consulting subsidiary of Porsche, the Munich Re as a reinsurance company, KUKA and a few others, and they implemented a very setup for smart factory as a service, which I like because it was combining contract manufacturing with the capabilities of a reinsurance company to, let's say, collect so much data that they feel they are able to guarantee a certain productivity level. So they would step in if the productivity goes below, let's say, 80 or 90%, and pay the money, let's say, for the gap, just because they believe they can learn from all the data in order to guarantee this. And I like this very much. I think human factor in the center was there from the beginning. The topic of employability was not there at the very beginning in 2011, but it popped up when we found out that, in particular through more artificial intelligence on autonomous systems, there started a public debate on how much work will be left. Will there be a high level of unemployment? How fast can we upskill people? What will we do with those employees we can't take with us on the new journey, etc.? So there were a lot of tough questions that surfaced to the public debate, and that's where we came up with this concept of employability. If you remember, I think, let's say 20, 30 years ago, when I joined SAP, it was like in Japan, normal that people were trying to attract talents by promising that they could have a secure job for their entire life in one company. the second phase was that we all felt that if we pick the right study at university, might be as a mechanical engineer or as an electrical engineer, we will be an electrical engineer our entire life. And that has changed. So the question comes up, how can we combine the desire for job security with the requirement of lifelong learning? And the question is how much responsibility lies at the individual employee, that he has to take time and effort, let's say, to train himself and upskill himself. But on the other side, I felt that we need a kind of a new social contract where a company should also see it as their responsibility to help employees, let's say, to upskill their capabilities beyond what's necessary for the company, so that they keep their employability in the overall market and not just in the company. I think there's a joint, you see my point, yeah? A joint social contract that the employees takes effort for free time, etc., to skill up, but on the other side, feeling that's not 100% for the company, 50% and 50% for myself, something like that. Honestly, not. It's a different question. So I think we have put it this way. I'm also running within Acatec a group of executives being in charge of human resource, let's say from the top companies, around 15 people. The hidden discussion, which is not very popular, is more everybody believes there will be, depending, 15, 20, 25% of the employees where they believe it will not be easy to upskill them in the right way. And the hidden question is how, let's say, to deal best with these problems. That has nothing to do with old or young, but it's just the question of, I would say, the profile of people. That is something which has not surfaced so much in the public debate because the companies are a little bit concerned to bring this up in public. But I know it's behind the scenes a topic because amongst us it is being debated, and we have to see how we tackle this. So it's not young, old, but it's more there are people who are agile or capable enough to change and to adapt, and others who aren't. It's a topic that will come up, I think, soon, and we will see how to deal with that. Not easy. Yeah. Surprisingly, there is a certain percentage of people who like to do every day the same things. That is a little bit surprising to me personally because I get bored if things repeat so often, but it's not true for everybody. And you know that it's in particular replacing routine, manual and cognitive work, and if you like routine, manual and cognitive work, then we come into conflict there. Yeah, there are two topics. One is that a little bit more difficult, that let's say, education system, the public education system has to be changed and to take care a little bit more on the soft skills, developing personalities more than, let's say, factual expertise. That is one direction, which will take longer because it's always more difficult. Internally, from my experience, I think the best is just to challenge people, to trust into their abilities. So sometimes it's not bad to throw people into cold water, different types of cold water, and let them find out what their capabilities are. I'm not personally, but might be I'm wrong, don't get me, but you asked my personal idea. I was never a fan of big seminars in developing personalities. I because it might be my career. I always was challenged and had to learn it myself, but there was trust behind that I could do it. That was better. So I like to be in cold water and try to swim instead of somebody telling me how to swim. Therefore, I might be not the right person to answer this. It might be doesn't fit to everything. Yeah, okay. That's a good question because the more we work in an ecosystem, the more there will be a fight which company gets the attention of the consumer. It's the same like with Apple. No? I think it's the Apple brand, but it's produced somewhere else. But people see Apple and don't see the producer behind. That happens in many industries and was a key topic when we discussed smart services. And the question was, will be the future focal point to the consumer, the company that is providing mobility service, or will it be the company that is producing the car? And my biggest concern was all the time that if car companies don't change, they will lose the customer contact and will be just a replaceable, I would say, company, not really valued by the consumer. I think that's your question, and I come to it. But that's a core. If you compare it to the industry I'm coming from the digital industry, I think that's there for decades. I think we always in an IT stack struggled who is seen, and you can adopt different strategies. Think about Intel. There was a slogan, Intel Inside. Nobody has ever seen a chip, but it was more or less the core engine, of the user experience and performance, etc. That is one direction you could go. Another one is the question, who is the one in an ecosystem where the customer feels is the final responsibility, this one throat to choke. I know it from the software industry. So at the beginning, it were always the big system integrators. But over time, in my experience in SAP, more and more it shifted to the software companies because there is the experience to help the customer in critical situations. So that's another, let's say, positioning you could take. I come to the car industry, but let's translate this first. I believe in the car industry, but I'm not from a car industry. But I personally believe that that the car manufacturer over time have to convert into a service company. I strongly believe in mobility as a service, even if it takes 20 or 30 years, and that would mean to transform from a product company more into a service company. The same if now in IT you have cloud productions where it's more or less the same. If you sell software, is different than providing software as a service. It's completely different. And it's different capabilities, it's a different business model, it's a different culture in a company, etc. And the transformation isn't easy, it takes time. But I strongly believe it's necessary. So I'm a little bit concerned if this model Intel Inside would work in the automotive industry. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert, but I'm doubtful. Put it this way. I'm doubtful. I think the other way is a better one. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, indeed, I think that's not a Japanese question, that's a global one, because I think it can be seen already in this famous book from Clayton Christensen on the innovator's dilemma, that the successful large companies, I think, to some extent, are not able any longer to create good enough products, and therefore, you know this story. Um, we have discussed this in Germany and came up with this idea of what I said yesterday, ambidextrous approach, or you would say a dual strategy or double-handed or whatever you would call it, to combine um, the benefits of a large scaling, uh, partially waterfall type company with the benefits of agile, small and innovative entities. So that's the reason why most companies are creating these internal incubators where they have protected smaller internal entities with more freedom, with more, I would say, with a different way of working and, important, a different leadership style. In combination with the rest of the company. That is a challenge in particular for the executives because they have to, how to say, they have to be authentic, but to be present or engage themselves in a different way to different communities. And but it seems to be the only pragmatic way. I can give you a few examples, and then might be I stop. If you look back some years, and to some extent, the very early product from BMW, the i3, was such a thing where I think a very dedicated separate team developed a completely different car. And you can imagine that I was for many years in the supervisory board, so I know it a little bit. It was only possible with the, how to say, with the strong support of the CEO because it cost a lot of money. It was very early. If I look now, I'm in the board of KUKA, which is a robot company, and we are developing, and I'm head of the strategy committee there, a new operating system. It is a small protected group up to the, in all our meetings is the chairman, the CEO, I'm there, etc. And we're protecting this team and developing completely new stuff. Very good. High risk, high risk. And I can tell you, I get approached even as a board member, supervisory board, not executive, from employees who tell me that's the wrong way. They have 20 years experience, and you know all this thing. And to some extent, you need the experience, but they are resistant. And that is a key management challenge. And you have to protect the one for a while, but you have to do it in a way that the others feel that they are still valued, that they need your expertise, etc. But it's a top management requirement to keep these two cultures together and find the right moment when you, let's say, make the new things the mainstream for the entire company. That is the critical moment. And it's more a challenge, I believe, in engineering than in sales or consulting, in particular because you have to combine these long-term experience of the old with the new technology ideas, tools of the young ones coming from universities. And that isn't easy because you cannot afford to do everything from scratch again. This experience is important, but there is resistance because, look, if you work 20 years of your life very successfully in a certain environment and you learn certain things, and out of a sudden people tell you this is wrong, you lose 20 years of effort. And not everybody likes this, and that's understandable and needs a kind of a feeling for engineers. I think I give you maybe finally a personal example or experience. In SAP, we had, let's say, if the company is growing, you need a structure which is cost center, departments, people have hundreds of engineers and they take care that at a certain point in time, big products are delivered on time and quality to clients. So that is one thing. This is a structure. But in parallel, you need what we call deep smarts, so individuals who are architects, who are leaders in thinking. They don't have many people. They don't care on status that they have 1,000 people. They have might be 5 or 10, or they work alone. But they are valued as high as the others, in salary and everything. And if you shift, for example, I had to shift to service-oriented architecture in 2003. I collected, in particular, a group of 30 of these architects and deep smarts to convince them and get them on my side that this is the right way to go, because these are people others look to. Because they say, look, whatever he's doing, but he's good. and people know who is good in a team. Come on, that is the normal group thing. It's one thing is the status that he is the leader of a big department, but people know amongst engineers who is good. You know my point, and you have to convince those in parallel. So you have to convince both groups. These are the advocates later on who go out and who start, and the others say, oh, he's doing it, might be good, I follow him.
この度はおめでとうございました。また本当にありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. Okay, good luck. Yeah, thank you.
Please smile. Smile.